I was 14 when my parents first trusted me to stay home alone overnight. Our house sat on the outskirts of a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and the local diner serves the best pie you have ever tasted. We had 5 acres of land, mostly wild and overgrown, bordered by dense woods on 2 sides and rolling fields on another. A lazy river snaked along the southern edge of our property, its muddy waters always looking like they were up to no good. It was early summer when my folks decided to take a quick trip to visit my aunt in the next state over. They'd been hesitant to leave me alone before, but I'd been begging for months, insisting I was old enough to handle it. Finally, they relented. Mom left a list of emergency numbers on the fridge, along with strict instructions not to answer the door for anyone. Dad slipped me some cash for pizza and ruffled my hair before they drove off, promising they'd be back by lunchtime tomorrow. As soon as their taillights disappeared down our long gravel driveway, I felt a rush of excitement, the whole house to myself. No bedtime, no one telling me to turn down my music or stop playing video games. I immediately cranked up the stereo and danced around the living room like a maniac, reveling in my newfound freedom. As evening settled in, I ordered a large pepperoni pizza from Luigi's, the only decent place that delivered out this far. While I waited, I set up camp in the den, dragging blankets and pillows onto the oversized leather couch. I had a whole night of movies and video games planned, starting with the latest zombie flick I'd been dying to see. The pizza arrived just as the sun was dipping below the tree line. I tipped the delivery guy generously, probably too much, but I felt like a big shot with my parents' money. I settled in with my feast, hit play on the movie, and lost myself in a world of gore and jump scares. It was nearing midnight when I heard the first knock. At first, I thought it was just part of the movie, some idiot protagonist about to open the door to certain doom. But then it came again, louder this time. My heart leapt in two. My throat, who the hell would be knocking at this hour? I muted the TV and crept towards the front door, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. Through the peephole, I could make out a man's face, distorted by the fisheye lens. He looked to be in his 40s, with a scruffy beard and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. "Hello." His voice was muffled through the door. "I'm sorry to bother you so late, but my car broke down about a mile back. I was hoping I could use your phone to call for a tow." Every instinct in my body screamed danger. I remembered my mom's words, "Don't open the door for anyone." "I'm sorry," I called back, trying to make my voice sound deeper, more adult. "I can't let you in, but I can call a tow truck for you if you'd like." There was a pause, then. "That's real kind of you, but I'd rather make the call myself if you don't mind. It'll only take a minute." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I'll be happy to call for you, though." Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had an edge to it. "Listen, kid, I know you're alone in there. Why don't you just open up and let me use the damn phone?" Ice flooded my veins. How did he know I was alone? I backed away from the door, my mind racing. Should I call the police? My parents? Before I could decide, the porch light flickered and went out. A second later, the house was plunged into darkness. Panic gripped me as I fumbled for my cell phone. No signal. Of course, we barely got reception out here on a good day. I ran to the landline in the kitchen, but the line was dead. My hands shook as I tried to process what was happening. This couldn't be a coincidence. A floorboard creaked somewhere in the house. I froze, straining my ears in the darkness. Had I imagined it? Then I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the direction of the back door. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I had to hide, but where? The house suddenly felt alien and unfamiliar in the dark. I crept towards the stairs, wincing at every tiny sound my movements made. As I reached the bottom step, a beam of light cut through the darkness. Flashlight. I pressed myself against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. The light swept across the living room, inching closer. To where I stood, in a burst of desperate energy, I bolted up the stairs. I heard a curse behind me, followed by heavy footsteps giving chase. I ran to my parents' room, slamming and locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I pushed the heavy oak dresser in front of it, the legs screeching against the hardwood floor. "Come on out, kid," the man's voice called from the hallway. "I'm not gonna hurt you. I just need to use the phone, that's all." I bit back a hysterical laugh. "Yeah, right." I looked around wildly for a weapon, anything I could use to defend myself. My eyes landed on my dad's golf clubs in the corner. I grabbed a 9-iron, gripping it so tight my knuckles turned white. The doorknob rattled, then there was a solid thud as the intruder threw his weight against it. The dresser shuddered but held. I backed away, my gaze darting between the door and the window. We were on the second floor, too high to jump without risking serious injury. Another crash against the door. The dresser inched forward. I realized with sickening clarity that it wouldn't hold for long. Think, I told myself, what would the hero in a movie do? My eyes fell on my mom's vanity, the mirror, in a flash of inspiration. I grabbed it off the wall and propped it against the foot of the bed, angling it so it reflected the door. Then I ducked into the walk-in closet, leaving the door open just a crack. The bedroom door finally gave way with a splintering crack through the sliver of the closet door. I watched in the mirror as the intruder entered, his flashlight beam sweeping the room. "Where are you, you little shit?" he growled. I held my breath, clutching the golf club. The man moved further into the room, his back to the closet. This was my chance. I burst out of my hiding spot, swinging the club with all my might. It connected with a sickening thud, and the intruder crumpled to the ground. I didn't wait to see if he was out cold. I ran down the stairs, out the front door, across our overgrown lawn. I didn't stop until I reached our nearest neighbor's house, a good quarter-mile away. I pounded on their door, screaming for help. The next few hours passed in a blur of flashing police lights and concerned faces. My parents were called, racing home in a panic. The police searched our property but found no sign of the intruder. He had vanished into the night, leaving behind only a few muddy footprints and a broken door as evidence of the terror he brought into our lives. In the days that followed, my parents installed a top-of-the-line security system. They talked about moving, but in the end, we stayed. This was our home, and we refused to let fear drive us out. But sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind whispers through the trees, I find myself staring out at the dark woods that surround our house. And I can't help but wonder if he's still out there, waiting for another chance to finish what he started. When I turned 24, I decided I needed a change. So I packed my things and I moved to a new city. I got a job, I got a cheap apartment, and I tried to settle in. But after a couple of months, I still felt like something was missing. So I started exploring the city, taking long walks around the downtown area. One afternoon, I found a grocery store that I had never seen before, stocked with boxes of slightly bruised apples and mystery meat. Next door, I discovered a little laundromat where I could get a whole load washed and dried for $2.50. And right across from that, hidden behind some graffiti and a chain link fence, was an apartment complex with an address I didn't recognize. It looked old, but not all bad. So I knocked on the door, told the landlord I was looking for a place, and he let me walk up the creaky stairs to take a look. It wasn't much. The bathroom had yellow stains and the kitchen hadn't been updated since the 60s. But I liked the location and the price was right, so I paid the security deposit and I moved in. The first couple of weeks were nice. I put together my bed, got some cable, and tried to ignore the roaches. Then the weird stuff started happening. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I had just finished watching an episode of Star Trek when I noticed that the ceramic frog I left on my windowsill was lying on the floor. I picked it up, placed it back where it belonged, then went to bed. In the morning, I woke up early, made some coffee, and went to work. When I came home that evening, the frog was back on the floor. I chalked it up to coincidence and I forgot about it until a few days later when the glass on my sliding door was fogged over. I stared at it for a moment, trying to figure out if it was dirty or if there was a bug on the other side. Then I pushed it open and stepped outside. I had never opened this door in the 2 weeks I'd been living here. I know because I was the one who installed the deadbolt when I moved in. I locked it back, walked inside, and tried to resume my evening routine. But no matter how many times I checked, I couldn't get the door to seal. As the sun went down, I made dinner, ate, then went to bed. In the morning, I woke up early again. My bedroom window was open and my curtains were billowing in the breeze. I know I shut that window. I can still remember the sound the glass made when I pressed it shut. I stood there thinking about it for a moment. Then I got dressed and went to work. That afternoon, I came home and found my screen door hanging off its hinges. I had not taken this door off its hinges in the 3 weeks I'd been living here. I replaced the screws, locked it, and waited for night to fall. That time I used my mattress as a barricade. Still, even with that flimsy barrier between me and whatever was outside, I slept fitfully, waking often with the feeling that I was being watched. The next day, I came home and found a half-eaten apple on my kitchen floor. I didn't buy any fruit. My neighbor must have dropped it while passing by, I thought. So I picked it up, threw it away, and I tried to forget about it. But that night I heard something scratching at my door. I peeked through the peephole and saw nothing. In the morning, I found my door frame splintered, and that's when I snapped. I went online and ordered the cheapest security camera I could find. I mounted it above my door and pointed it toward my welcome mat. Then I sat down with a cup of coffee and I waited. For a week, nothing happened. Then one night I was woken up by a loud crash. I ran to my door and looked out through the camera. The screen was filled with static. I changed the batteries, reconnected the cables, but every time I tried to check the footage, it was erased. It was like somebody had pressed a rewind button, erasing everything that happened before. I showed the camera to the building manager, but he said it was probably just glitching. He tried to reset it for me, but we couldn't figure out how, so he just shrugged and walked away. On my way back upstairs, I stopped by the apartment next door. An older woman opened the door and smiled at me. She smelled like cinnamon and old books. "Do you have a cat?" I asked her. "No, why?" "Because I keep finding hair on my floor. Maybe it's a stray," she said, then closed the door. Sleep paralysis began to take hold of me. Every night I would wake up for a moment, then go back to sleep. And every time I did, I could feel something heavy pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Each time I resisted, I could feel the darkness pressing closer, trying to smother me. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. I tried to move, but I was stuck. One night, I woke up in the middle of an episode. My eyes were wide open, staring straight at the foot of my bed. There was a black, shapeless thing sitting there, silent and still. My mind screamed at me to move, to say something, to do anything, but I couldn't. I knew whatever was at the foot of my bed wasn't human. I could feel the air growing cold and I could hear the silence pressing against my eardrums. But I couldn't call out for help. I couldn't move. All I could do was stare and wait, and then it reached out. A finger, maybe a claw, I couldn't tell, touched my nose and sent a jolt of electricity through my body. I woke up gasping for breath. I lay there frozen, unsure if I wanted to move. Then I got up and walked to the bathroom. Looking at myself in the mirror, I asked, "What did I miss?" But there was no answer. I splashed water on my face, trying to wake myself up. Then I went back to bed, pulled the covers over my head and cried. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The room was dark and silent except for the tapping of rain against the window. I got up and stumbled to the camera. The battery was dead. I replaced it and checked the footage. It was blank. I disconnected the wires, threw them across the room, then curled up on my couch. How long had this been going on? Was I losing my mind? Had I always been alone, or had I missed something? 3 nights later, the scratching returned. This time I barricaded my door with a dresser. Still, I could hear scratching sounds on the other side, almost like fingernails on wood. Then the sound stopped. I waited, listening to the steady drumming of the rain. Then I heard footsteps pacing back and forth on the other side of my wall. I could hear the scraping of furniture, the thud of something heavy hitting the floor, and muffled human voices. I didn't understand what I was hearing, but it sounded like something from a nightmare. Then the scratching started again, followed by heavy footsteps. I watched the clock on my wall counting the minutes until dawn. The next morning, I woke up early. The room was dark and silent. I got up and walked to the camera. The battery was dead. I replaced it and checked the footage. It was blank. I ripped the camera off the wall and held it in front of me as I walked through my apartment. There was something else here, something big enough to leave scratches on my door, to kick in the frames and step over my barricades. Something that could move heavy furniture and whisper to itself in the dark. As I rounded the corner into my bedroom, I could see a faint outline in the dust motes floating in the pale morning light. I blinked and the shape sharpened into focus, revealing a doorway where there shouldn't have been one. I stared at it for a moment, unsure if I wanted to go through. Then I walked into the darkness and emerged into a narrow space. The walls were bare concrete and the only light came from a single bare bulb dangling from a cord overhead. I could feel the stares of unseen eyes boring into me from the darkness. I took a deep breath and started walking. After what felt like hours, I came to a ladder leading up into blackness. I climbed until I could see a dim glow ahead. I continued until I came to another door. I pushed it open and walked outside. The sun was shining, and birds were singing. It was a beautiful day. I scanned the rooftops until I found the chimney from my apartment. There was a hole where a bird's claw had scraped away some bricks. Then I noticed something else. My roof wasn't the only one that had a hole. I don't know if what I experienced was real or imagined, if I really am alone or if something is sharing my apartment. Sometimes I think I'm crazy, especially when I find little piles of dirt in the corners of my room. Other times I'm sure I'm right. If you ever visit my hometown though, and you want to look for yourself, you'll find my apartment on Elm Street. It's the third door from the laundromat, down the hall from Mrs. Hemlock's apartment. Just knock on the door and listen for the scratching. If you hear it, then you'll know. I'm just gonna say it. Living with two housemates is the worst decision I ever made. For those who don't know me, I'm a 21-year-old university student studying criminology. I moved out of my family home last year and moved into this house with 3 other people I barely knew. We all met at an open house viewing hosted by a real estate agent. My room was pretty cheap at $400 a month. It is not much to ask for a room with some carpet stains and a window that doesn't lock. But at least I had a roof over my head. I was lucky to find somewhere so close to campus. The bus stop is right outside the house and there is a convenience store and a cafe around the corner. It's pretty much the perfect location, that is until we started seeing him, I don't know his name, which honestly would make things easier. If I did, I could talk about him in past tense, but since I don't, everything I say is still in present tense. We first noticed him about 2 months ago. He always seems to be hanging around the bus stop or sitting in the cafe across the street from us. Sometimes he sits on the other side of the street directly opposite my bedroom window. He just sits there staring. If we walk down the street towards the shops, then he'll cross the road and walk in the opposite direction. He also always keeps to himself and has never spoken to any of us, so it's not like we pissed him off or something. One evening I came home from class to find my front door wide open. Usually we leave it unlocked because our landlord never comes by and checks up on us. When he does come by, he literally just walks in without knocking. But I thought maybe my housemate had left the door unlocked when she went out earlier. She didn't answer her phone. When I called her, so I texted her instead. She said that she hadn't been home and that she'd leave the spare key with a neighbor next time she saw her. Over the next few days, small things started going missing from my room. A pair of scissors, a charging cable, and then my phone. All 3 items were taken from my room when the door was locked. Of course, I told my housemates and they didn't believe me. They kept giving me these looks like I was making the whole thing up. They think I'm just some sort of paranoid university student. They have a point. Most of our stuff is just lying around, and it is easy to lose track of where you put things sometimes. But then the photos started showing up. One day I came home from school to find a photo slipped under my door. It was a photo of me sleeping in my bed. My blinds were closed, but clearly someone had opened them to take the photo. Another photo showed my housemate sleeping in hers. Her blinds were open, so I guess it wasn't the same person. And then another photo appeared of me sleeping again. Only this time the photo was taken from further away. Someone was standing in the hallway taking photos through the gap in my door. It wasn't until a week later that I realized what was in the photos I'd taken on my phone. In every photo I'd taken on my phone of me sleeping, there's a faint outline of a man standing in the corner of my room. He's dark-skinned and quite skinny. I tried to describe him to the police, but obviously they didn't take me seriously. How could I have missed someone breaking into my room? And why would someone break into my room only to take photos of me sleeping? As much as I hated to admit it, the cops had a point. Maybe I was making the whole thing up. My housemate started acting weird after that. She wouldn't talk to me and she'd avoid eye contact. Sometimes when I'd come home from school, I'd hear her talking on the phone. She'd get really quiet when I walked in. I'd never heard her on the phone before, and now it felt like she was hiding something. I started finding her behavior more and more suspicious. I'd come home from school to find the front door wide open and my windows unlatched, or I'd come home to find things in my room moved around or slightly broken. Things escalated when my housemate packed her stuff and left. Now I am living in this house alone with a stranger who likes to take photos of me while I sleep. The photos stopped coming after the second week of March. I haven't seen the guy in a month now. I've been meaning to change my locks, but I've been too scared to do it. I mean, what if whoever's been stalking me finds out I changed the locks? What if they're watching me? What if they followed me home from the hardware store? What if they broke in and I wasn't home? What if they killed me? My dad keeps telling me to go home, but I can't. I need to finish this semester. Besides, my dad won't help me pay rent if I move back in with him, and I can't afford it on my own. So here I am still living in that house, still not knowing who that man is and still not knowing what his intentions are. Then last night things got real scary. I was doing an online quiz on my couch and I started hearing noises coming from my bedroom. At first I thought it was the wind, but then I started hearing footsteps, slow, dragging footsteps. I slowly made my way towards my bedroom door and peeked around the corner. There was the doorknob. Someone was trying to turn it. I ran out of the house and down the street screaming for help. This guy in a car stopped and asked if I was okay. I was shaking and crying, so I just nodded and ran away. He started following me, but I kept running. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to get away from that house. When I finally stopped running, I turned around to see that the guy from the car was gone. I was standing in front of a convenience store. I looked back down the street towards my house. The guy was standing at the end of the street looking at me. He gave me a little wave and smiled. Then he turned and walked away. The guy from the car must have seen him because he came out of the store and drove off. I was freaking out, so I stayed in the store for a while. Eventually, I calmed down and went home. In the morning, I told the police everything that happened. They went to my house to do a search, but they didn't find anything. I told them about the basement crawl space, but they said that it was probably just animals down there. I went to check on my plants. They were all dead, but it wasn't water or lack of sunlight that killed them. They were burned. Something had taken a lighter to them. That's when the police came downstairs. They found some charred papers in the crawl space, which turned out to be the photos. The police were able to match the photos too. The guy who lived across the street from us. They found fingerprints on the doorknob, which matched a guy named Ben who'd been arrested last year for petty theft. They questioned Ben and he admitted to trespassing on private property and taking photos, but he said that he'd only done it once and that he hadn't meant to cause any harm. The police let Ben go, but they told me to come in for questioning. They asked me if I wanted to press charges against him. I'm still waiting to hear back from the police, but I doubt anything will happen. Ben didn't hurt anyone. No one was physically harmed. I mean, sure, my feelings were hurt and I was traumatized and terrified, but is that enough to press charges? Anyway, I still live in that house and I still haven't changed the locks. But the good news is that I haven't seen Ben since.